WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American, here in Berlin, BCB 2019, together with
David Lind from Glen Scotia Distillery.
Hey, very good. I like Glen Scotia, by the way. Very good.
Me too. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You have good taste.
The 15 really just opened up my world of great single malt whiskey, so very nicely done. Tell me a little bit about the history of the distillery, if you'd be so kind.
Well, it goes back a long way to 1832, and we've been making whiskey for a long time, but the history of Campbelltown, as you probably know, is quite a turbulent history.
Yeah.
And I think, so I'll focus on the more recent history. This is probably relevant, is we've really been focusing on the brand for the last 5 years now. We were taken over by a new management team in 2014, and that really heralded a new time for Glen Scotia. We invested a lot of money in the distillery. We repackaged the brands, we reformulated the product range that you see in front of you, and that's really what we've been taking to market for the past 4 or 5 years, and it's been going really well. We're delighted.
Very good. So they don't see it, it's down below, so I'm going to hold up a couple of the little boxes here. So we have the double cask, first of all. What's so special about this?
Yeah, so the double cask is really the entry level for the brand portfolio. So-called double cask because of the style of maturation. It's all matured in first fill bourbon.
Okay.
And then it's all matured in Pedro Jimenez sherry. So just to be clear, it's not a mixture of the two. All of the whiskey in double cask is matured in first fill bourbon, then it's emptied and then filled into Pedro Jimenez. So it's for me, it's about the combination of flavours. You've got that classic Campbelltown style, the kind of oily, fruity, nutty, and that maritime character, that touch of salt.
I like that.
And then it's the maritime character that combines very well with the combination of the bourbon and the sherry. So you get a lovely kind of sweet and salt, like salted caramel almost. So for me, the double cask is all about that combination of flavours. It's fantastic.
So this is still a no age statement, I think, right?
That's correct.
But then we move up here to right away to the 15-year-old. No 10s, no 8s, no 12s. 15-year-old. Hit them to them. This was one of my entry whiskeys. I love this. This is so good. What's the secret here?
I think the secret is it's produced in a very traditional, classical way. Everybody always describes this one as the real taste of Campbelltown, and I think you're right. I mean, it was the one you called out immediately. It's all bourbon. It's all ex-bourbon, a combination of first fill and refill, and I think what that does is it really emphasises the distillery character. So you get, as I said, that lovely oiliness, the fruitiness, a little bit of nut, and that real saline, salty note, and that really comes through strongly in the Glen Scotia 15 because there's not as much impact from the maturation as there is, for example, in the double cask. So it's the perfect example of the Campbelltown style. It's a very traditional, what I would say is a classic whiskey.
And then we have the 18-year-old moving up.
Moving up again to the 18. So this is a wonderful whiskey as well. It's 17 years in refill bourbon, and then it's a 1-year marriage and further maturation in Oloroso sherry.
Okay, very good.
For me, what that creates is a very elegant, very sophisticated whiskey. It's very perfumey. You get a lot of honey on the nose, and then you get a lot of sweetness as well from the Oloroso. But the Oloroso really just polishes it beautifully. It takes off all the kind of sharp edges, and it really is just a really kind of fine, sophisticated, elegant whiskey.
And the last one then for today would be the Victoriana. This is something a little bit more peated, isn't it?
It's a little bit peated. I think most of the flavour comes from the maturation. Right. It's quite an interesting story. Yeah. The name, can I tell quickly about the name? Yeah.
We have all the time that the people watch, don't worry.
So this is quite an interesting story. It's called Victoriana, and the name comes from the Victorian age, or when Queen Victoria was in charge of the United Kingdom, and that's when Campbelltown was at its peak.
Right. There are 60-something distilleries back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 30 at least. Okay. Just over 30.
I've heard numbers up and down all over the place.
I think I can confidently say 30, or 31, 32 maybe. But so there's only 3 today, as you know. So that was when it really was at its peak. It was known as the Victorian whiskey capital of the world, and this product was developed to pay respect or to pay homage to that time. So it was really developed to taste like a whiskey would have tasted, 150 years ago. So it's big, powerful, rich, muscular. It's a real full-flavoured whiskey. And you're right, some of that because of it, like some of the whiskey in here is peated, so you get that smoky element. But also it's the maturation. There's a lot of cask influence here. It's quite an old whiskey. There's no age statement on it, but it's about 11 and a half years old. It's matured in bourbon, and then the bourbon casks are vatted. 30%. It's quite complicated, so pay attention, right?
Okay, 30%.
So 30% goes into Pedro Jimenez casks, and 70% goes into what we call deep char or heavy charred casks. So that's casks that have been decharred and then fired for 5, 6, 7 minutes. So they're really heavy char, and the charcoal is very thick, like black alligator skin.
We call it in America. We call it alligator. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that really gives a kind of really sweet flavor, very spicy notes, and almost like some herbal notes.
Were those bourbon casks or wine casks, or what have you actually scraped and then recharred?
Bourbon.
Okay,
Bourbon, yeah. So we'd used the bourbon before, and then it was decharred, and then heavily charred again, and that forms the flavour. So all of that flavour, as I say, it's a very big whiskey, and we've been having. It's got a bit of a quite a big following now. Actually, it's just such an interesting flavour. We did the Stockholm Beer and Whiskey Festival a couple of weeks ago. This got the gold medal. We did Moscow Whiskey Live. This one got the best in show, the best no age statement in show. So we're getting a lot of success, and a lot of people are liking it. So please give it a try.
Very good, very good. Anything we can expect in the future? Any other additions here to the core range, or will there just be single cask bottlings?
I think we'll get single cask. We do some. I think there's two things I would highlight. One is we do have some interesting older stocks available. So we just launched a Glen Scotia 45 years old just now, and that's available. It's just in the market a few weeks ago. And look out for some really interesting older, very limited but older age statements coming. I think the second thing I would mention is that every year we release a festival edition. And that is the idea behind that is the idea behind that is we have the
port cask last year, I think, right?
It was Guyana rum cask. It was Guyana rum cask this year.
Last year was port, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Ruby port last.
I only had the ruby port. I haven't had the rum cask yet.
And we've got a very interesting. I'll send you a bottle when it comes out. We've got a very interesting one next year. And the idea behind it is we have the Campbelltown Festival every year in May, just before the Isla Festival, and there are some limited bottlings available at the distillery. But the idea of the festival edition bottling is that we are able to bring the festival to people, because Campbelltown's quite a difficult place to get to. So it's a way of bringing Campbelltown to people. So we produce a limited bottling every year to celebrate the Campbelltown Festival. And next year it's going to be quite an interesting one as well. It's going to be probably maybe,
possibly,
allegedly, port casks, but a different style of port. So keep a lookout for that.
All right. Wow, you heard it here. Very, very good. And the 45-year-old Glen Scotia, what does the retail price look at?
It's high.
It's high. And if you have to ask, you can't afford it, Jason. Thank you very much. WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany, together with
David Lind from Glen Scotia. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.